Hey everyone, it's Gorelock here. The time has finally come. Shadowlands beta has dropped, at least the main content of it has dropped as of a couple hours ago, and we're having tons and tons of new information pouring in. We have not got our specific conduits yet. I have a feeling that's going to come probably in the next week or so. So, what we're going to focus on this video is looking at the general class changes, the talent changes, as well as the legendaries that literally just got updated like an hour or two ago. So let's get right into it. So my initial thoughts for the Ret Paladin as a general summary, they are looking very, very strong. So I'm going to go over first the talents over here. The talent tree looks pretty similar to what it currently is in BFA with a couple of minor changes that I'll point out. So the 15 row here is exactly the same. You still have Zeal, Righteous Verdict, and Execution Sentence. Nothing has changed here. The second row, the 25 row, this is where you start to get change. Over here, instead of Hammer of Wrath, which has been baseline, by the way, which I'll go over in a sec, we now have Imperium Power, which in its current state, Crusader Strike has a 15% chance to make your next Divine Storm free and deal 25% additional damage. This is going to be a very, very strong talent. And I have a feeling you will probably take this Imperium Power talent the majority of the time. If you're not taking this one, you will probably end up taking Blade of Wrath. Your 30 row, this was a different row, I believe, but it's still the same exact three choices. So nothing to really go over there. Same for the 35 row. This is the exact same row from BFA. The 40 row is the row with the biggest changes. It's a completely new row. And here you get Divine Purpose, which originally was over here where Sanctified Wrath is. So yes, that means you can have now Crusade and Divine Purpose. That is going to be very, very powerful. You also have here Holy Avenger, which triples your holy power generation for 20 seconds. If you're looking for a really strong burst build, this is going to be a really good option. And then you have Seraphim over here. However, Seraphim, as it is right now, is going to it's a little bit awkward to play with, honestly. However, the Holy Avenger and the Divine Purpose are looking really, really strong. Here in the 45 row, I was hoping they got rid of Justicar's Vengeance, but it seems like it's still there, so it's Selfless Healer. Word of Glory got replaced because it's now baseline, but it's much weaker. It got replaced with Healing Hands. I am not a fan of this row. Healing Hands seems like a very niche ability that I probably won't take. Most of the time, it looks like you're probably going to end up taking Selfless Healer. There can be some fun shenanigans that you do with Divine Purpose and Justicar's Vengeance, because you can make it free. But that's something to talk about more for PvP. Now, in the last row, you also have now Sanctified Wrath. So Sanctified Wrath, you get a 25% longer duration of wings, and you essentially have Light's Decree built into it. That's what it is at the end of the day. So that's the main talent changes that we're looking like going into the beta. Everything else here is the same. So now I'm going to go over the main changes for Ret and really all Paladins, because they're making it more of a class identity rather than a spec identity. So this gives a really good summary. So Blessing of Sacrifice, Hammer of Wrath, both those abilities, which were either talents or only for Holy and Prot in the case of Blessing of Sacrifice, are now baseline. Sense Undead is a new passive that just lets you sense Undead. It's more of a flavor ability. Shield of the Righteous is available for all specs now. That includes Ret. And as of, I believe, a week ago, they said a M+ change they're going to do is allow you to swap weapons. So you still can't swap gear, but you can swap weapons. So if you need a tank in a pinch, you'll be able to tank with Sword and Board and Shield of the Righteous, which is definitely a good utility. Turn Evil, this is going to be really wonky to play with in keys, but it is a 40-second fear that works on undead and aberrations and those kind of stuff. I think demons as well. And then we got Word of Glory, which is baseline. However, the baseline Word of Glory is significantly weaker. It's worth noting. Concentration, Crusader, and Devotion Aura are back for all specializations, which essentially means probably 90% of the time or more, you're going to just run Devotion Aura, which will give everyone in your raid or party, or including yourself, 3% less damage taken. Very powerful. Retribution Aura, like I said, I've said this many times. I don't like the design of Retribution Aura. I really hope that they fix it, but they probably won't. In its current form, which I think it'll be detailed later, it gives you essentially 12 seconds of wings. These are just some changes. Note that when you look at changes like this, it's really important to look at the multiple ranks. So no, Avenging Wrath is not 3 minutes. It will still be 2 minutes. So as we said before, Blessing a Sacrifice, no longer will it only be holy and prot. Ret will have it as well. We are getting Consecration as a baseline as well for Ret. So that's another tool that we're going to have. It has a 9-second cooldown. However, in its current form, it does not grant holy power. However, it does not have a target cap as far as I could tell. Crusader Strike now is going to cost mana, which is going to be interesting. I hope that doesn't hinder us later into the expansion when we have more haste. Is yet to be seen. But as of right now, what I've heard is the base mana cost shouldn't matter too much for Ret because you don't spend much mana on other stuff. Everything else here is pretty much the same. So the baseline Hammer of Wrath ability is actually stronger than its current iteration in BFA, which is worth noting. It does 120% attack power, which is up from 92%. For reference, currently Divine Storm, which I'll go over in a sec, does 133% of your attack power. So this is almost as strong. Actually, this is currently stronger than the current version of Divine Storm. Because Divine Storm in BFA does about 111% attack power. It's being boosted up to about 133%. So that should give you a rough idea of how strong Hammer Wrath is going to be. It's also a 7.5 second recharge or cooldown. It's essentially the same thing. That's going to be really important to note, and this is affected by haste. Because I'm going to go over a legendary that uses this. Actually, 2 legendaries use this, so it's going to be really important to pay attention to that. So Crusader Aura, for those that don't know what it is essentially your passive that made you 20% faster on mounts. You can give this to all raid members. Again, you're probably never going to use this. We have some changes to how Judgment's working for different specializations. Again, that's not going to really matter too much. Let me see. So Hammer of Shield of the Righteous, the way it'll work for Ret is it will cost 3 holy power. And then here's the Turn Evil. So it's a 15-second cooldown. You can flee undead, aberration, and demons. And when it says flee, it actually does mean flee. So it's technically a disorient, not exactly a fear. It's kind of weird in that sense. But they will just go in a straight line from wherever you fear them. So they can actually go really, really far. Testing has been done. They can run into other packs. It's worth noting now, if they run into another pack, they're not going to aggro the pack until they actually drop their fear. So use with caution, essentially. Word of Glory, this is the current version. It heals only a single player, and it's 225% of your spell power. So it's looking pretty weak. You're probably not going to use it much as Ret in its current iteration. It's much better for Prot and for Holy. Let's see. So now to go for the specific Ret changes. Again, I like using sort of these pre-made templates because it just goes over everything pretty quickly. So Wake of Ashes is now baseline. It's no longer a talent. And the current iteration of Wake of Ashes gives you 3 holy power instead of 5. Let me see if I could find that here. Yeah. So the initial damage is actually higher. It was up from 210% up to 315%. It does not have a target cap. However, it has a reduced damage on secondary targets. I've been told it's roughly 50%, so it's probably going to do about this 210% mark on all other enemies and the 315 on your main target. Again, it's still more powerful. The downside is it's no longer 5 holy power, it now gives you 3. Art of War has a big change as well. This is more minute, but it's important to note. So at the max level, so you want to look at rank 2, Art of War is going to have a 12% chance on your auto attacks to reset the cooldown of Blade of Justice. So it's no longer a proc per minute. It's a based on your auto attack, which means haste more directly affects it. And that also means the talent Blade of Wrath is going to be stronger. More specifically, if you are trying to get Blade of Wrath spam, you can go Zeal, which makes your auto attacks essentially 30% faster, and also Blade of Wrath, which will give you a 24% chance, because rank 2 is 12%, so a 24% chance on an auto attack that it'll reset it. So that's something interesting that you might be able to play around with. Also, it's worth noting that Blade of Justice has been reworked, so now it deals 145% attack power physical damage. That means at the beginning of the tier, when everything is a bit weaker, Blade of Justice is actually going to do almost as much damage as Divine Storm, because the attack power is actually higher. The damage difference is going to happen once you get a lot of mastery, because this is physical damage, so it will not scale the way that Divine Storm or Templar's Verdict will with mastery. The cooldown's also been changed from 11 seconds to 12 seconds, but that's pretty inconsequential. Still gives 2 holy power. So this is the Divine Storm I'm talking about. It's going up from 111.4 all the way up to 134% attack power. Target capped at 5 now. Again, this is going to be very, very powerful. Your blessings, your greater blessings, so Kings and Wisdom, they're gone. Other changes. Like I said, Consecration is now baseline. It does not generate 1 holy power anymore in its current iteration. It also does very, very little damage, which is worth noting. I believe that's all the changes for the base. Now, this is where it gets really, really spicy. So we're going to go into the Legendaries. I'll do the Covenants last. So this just came out today. You have your general legendary abilities, and then you have your specific ones. I can go over Prod another time. Prod also has some interesting stuff, but we're going to focus on Ret here. So your general ones, you have Uther's Guard, which is whenever you use one of your major cooldowns, you essentially get a bunch, it's the other way around. When you use your holy power, the cooldown on your pretty much all your blessings is reduced by 1 second. I believe that's per holy power. This one's probably not going to be used much. Maybe holy could find some use, but holy has some much better options than this. This is one of the ones that the theory crafters are playing around with right now. The Lilligren's Fury. So casting Wings or any Forbearance ability gives you 5 holy power. Could be potentially interesting for Burst, but while they're sort of playing around with that, I'm looking at some other stuff that I think will be stronger. However, it's worth noting that this might be an interesting contender. From Dusk Till Dawn is another interesting one. If you play your spec perfectly, you will be able to have the damage taken or damaged increase 6% up permanently. However, once again, there's going to be way more powerful abilities. So saying that a 6% damage all the time is not the most powerful, there's going to be some really crazy stuff coming up. Judgment has a 50% chance to reduce the cost of your next holy power spender by 1. Again, it's interesting, but like I said, these general ones are just not as strong as the specific ret ones, which I think are very overpowered. So this is what you guys really want to see. So over here, you have the ret ones. First one, we're getting Divine Tempest back. So this is the same skill as the one from Legion. So your Divine Storm now projects forward 20 yards, damaging all enemies. It also increases Divine Storm's damage by 20%. This is going to be very, very powerful for M+. It does say all enemies currently. However, I'm also being told as of right now, they think it has the 5 target cap still, but that's yet to be seen. Whether or not it keeps the 5 target cap will be very important to how powerful it will be in M+ in other situations. But the fact that it increases the damage and has the range extension alone will make it a solid trait. You have Relentless Inquisitor here, which you get haste. It wasn't that strong as a trait. I don't imagine it being all that great in Shadowlands either. Now, these last two are the real bread and butter. I believe these are the two that people are going to be simming the most and are looking the best. So this is my personal favorite one as of right now, Badge of the Mad Paragon. Hammer of Wrath extends Avenging Wrath by 3 seconds and deals 20% additional damage. Now this is big, really big. So Hammer of Wrath is going to do 20% additional damage. So that's instead of 120% scaling, we're looking at like 144% scaling. It's going to do a ton of damage. But more than that, extending Avenging Wrath, which is your wings, your main cooldown. Based on its current cooldown, which we can see over here, I believe it's in the general area. It said, where is it? I believe it said it was a 7.5 second cooldown, if I'm correct. Yeah, here it is. So Hammer Wrath has a 7.5 second recharge, affected by haste. So that means on average, you're going to have probably about a 6 second cooldown without any haste buffs whatsoever. And if you're running something like, say, Crusade, and you're going to have 50% haste, you can get this all the way down to probably about a 3 to 4 second cooldown. Probably closer to the 4 second area, which I could test this quickly in game, but it's going to have a pretty low cooldown. You're going to be able to extend wings a lot, which is looking really, really strong. By my estimates, you're probably going to be able to get up to, if you're starting at a base of about 25 seconds, you might be able to get up to about 45 seconds if you go with Crusade. We're talking about massive wings uptime here. 45 second wings, that's kind of like wings in its current iteration and getting 2 vision procs on top of it. Very, very powerful. Now, this one is also looking very nice. So Final Verdict, I've been told, was, I believe, a Legion trait as well. It replaces Templar's Verdict with Final Verdict. I'm being told Final Verdict, although it says 194% attack power, it might do a little bit more damage. What it doesn't say here is it has a 10-yard range. So you sort of become like a mid-range class, especially if you're single target, which is really nice. And then the other part has a 50% chance to activate Hammer of Wrath and reset its cooldown. Big damage. Big damage for sure. So you're going to be using Hammer of Wrath a lot more frequently, whether you go with the Badge or the Final Verdict build. As of right now, my money is probably on the Badge. Now, it's worth noting that Blizzard has given a nudge, nudge, wink, wink in terms of you're probably going to be able to put on more than one legendary ability in the future. I just want to point out here right now, and this is a secret between us, the infinite loop. Anyone else see it? I'm talking about, you have both of these. You have a Hammer of Wrath that extends wings by 3 seconds every single time you use it. And a Templar's Verdict that has a 50% chance to give you a Hammer of Wrath for free instantly and reset its cooldown. I smell perma wings. Does anyone else? I'll leave it at that. So now the last thing to go over is the Covenant. So the way I'm sort of looking at Covenants right now is I'm rating them based on situation. Divine Toll, single target, it sucks. It's really not great, especially for red. It's just a judgment on one target in single target, and it has a minute cooldown and costs a bunch of your mana. However, in AoE, so in M+, this can potentially be really, really strong. And you can see the video that's playing here for Prot, it's actually insane. But again, this is more about Ret right now. So for Ret, Divine Toll, I'd give it a eh. For single target, it's really bad. For AoE, it's decent. The signature ability, Summon Steward. Not a big fan. It can be nifty in some use cases, but it has a extremely long cooldown. 5 minutes. He does give you some other useful amenities, but Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of Kyrian, at least for Ret. Ashen Hollow, as of right now, is looking rather powerful. The damage that it does is pretty good. There's one big downside. It is a whopping 4-minute cooldown. And as of right now, it does only affect one target. So it gives you a lot of healing. It does a lot of damage, but it is an insanely long cooldown. And I'm not going to go into the conduits right now, but as of right now, there's a lot of conduits that synergize with lower cooldown Covenant abilities in the Venthyr area. So it being a 4-minute does not bode well. In fact, the versatility conduit, which is like the ultimate conduit for one of the 3 generals, is based on having a low cooldown. So it would literally be not viable. So that's worth noting. So I give it an A for the damage, but I give it a C for the major crazy long cooldown. I hope they reduce it. Door of Shadows gets an S rank. This is probably the best utility ability of every single Covenant. It is a 35-yard range, 1-minute cooldown teleport. So that means, yes, you could potentially teleport through Pax and M+. Very, very strong. The strongest of all of them, without a doubt. So overall, I give Venthyr probably a solid B right now. You got the best signature ability. However, the cooldown on this, it hurts. It's a really long cooldown. So if I give Venthyr an overall of like an A, I'm probably going to give Kyrian probably a C right now, honestly. At least for Ret. Necrolord. So Necrolord is interesting. You get Vanquisher's Hammer, which does some damage. It's essentially like a green-colored hammer. It's sort of weird. That does 80% spell power. Note that's about like 75% attack power, roughly. Shadow damage. Has a 30-second cooldown and gives you a... Or no, it costs 1 holy power. It actually costs holy power. What it does for Retribution is your next Templar's Verdict automatically triggers a Divine Storm. So it's consistent. The damage is consistent, so in that sense it's nice. However, it doesn't feel super impactful. It just becomes sort of part of your rotation. You use it every 30 seconds, but it's you have to Templar's Verdict to Divine Storm. You can't go the other way around. And also the cost of the 1 holy power is pretty weird. It's a little off-putting. I'll give it a C+, maybe. C+, B- in terms of power. I'm not thrilled by it. Fleshcraft is interesting. It will definitely have its niche cases. Downside is you have to channel it for 4 seconds, essentially. 20% of your max health is not a lot. Maybe it could have some use in M+, but again, I'm not thrilled by it. Overall, I'd probably give it around the same rank that I would give Kyrian. I'd probably give it about a C+. I'm not thrilled. I think the damage is a bit higher, for sure. So maybe we give this a B- and we give the Kyrian a C+, but I'm not thrilled. Now, the Night Fae one, they just reworked this again. This is as of 2 hours ago or so. The Night Fae Covenant ability is now, instead of affecting all the party members, it's much more of a selfish buff. However, it's way stronger. So, Blessing of Summer, which is the one you'll start with, is a 30-second blessing. You can go on any person, but you'll probably end up choosing yourself. You have a high chance to deal 75% spell power. That's about like 72% attack power. Holy damage, worth noting it's holy damage. So that's going to scale with your mastery, I believe. On every single attack. Literally every attack. Massive damage. Like unbelievably massive damage that's going to have. That turns into Blessing of Autumn. Again, a really good one. For 30 seconds, their cooldowns recover 50% faster. That means Wings, for instance, you're probably going to be able to take off about 15 seconds of Wings cooldown. Again, looking very, very strong. That then turns, I believe, into Winter. It might be Spring and then Winter, but either way, it's neither here nor there. Blessed Alley for 30 seconds. They're all 30 seconds. Their attacks deal 5% spell power frost damage. And it also reduces enemy movement by 3% and attack speed by 1. But the real thing to note is it stacks up to 10 times. So the faster you attack, the more you'll get up to that max faster. When you're at the max, you're going to do 50% spell power on every hit. And note, it's not a high chance, it's every attack. 50% spell power reduces their movement speed by 30% and their attack speed by 10%. Again, looking very, very powerful. The only bad one here, for 30 seconds, you're going to have this crappy Blessing of Spring. However, it's going to be still pretty useful in a raid situation because it blesses an ally and increases their healing done and healing received by 20%. So say, you're a minute and a half into the fight or whatever, a healer's going to have to pump out a lot. You give them this blessing, they're just doing 20% more healing. That can be almost like adding another healer. This is going to be exceptionally powerful. Overall, I give the current iteration of the Night Fae active ability, I give it an S. It is looking very, very strong. Now, Soul Shape is your signature ability. I think it's good. I don't think it's not as good as Venthyr. It's not a 35-yard teleport. However, it is a movement ability. And as a paladin, your current biggest weakness, you are not getting unwheelchaired this expansion. That is confirmed. It's a 1.5 minute cooldown. Turns you into a Vulpin, so you turn into, I guess, some sort of cute little creature or whatever. And while you're turned into a Vulpin, you have a 30% increased movement speed. It's a decent amount. And it lasts for 12 seconds. Pretty good. Also indefinitely in a rest area, but that's neither here nor there. That's more of a cosmetic. Now, you can also reactivate it to teleport 10 yards forward. So you do also get a teleport. Not as strong as the Venthyr, but this is a serious movement ability. 12 seconds of a 30% increase in speed, and also a 10-yard teleport during that time. That's roughly equivalent. If you include the teleport, you probably get about 50% movement speed bonus over the course of the 10 seconds or so. Roughly speaking, maybe a little less. It's not bad. I would give that probably an A. So overall, if I had to rate which one is looking the best for these covenants, it looks like we're going to go because Night Fae is looking really, really strong. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to this. This is the, sort of my first guess at what the beta and going into Shadowlands, what Red is going to look like. There's a lot of really positive things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you like this kind of stuff, make sure to comment and subscribe. I will have something on the conduits as soon as they come out. And thanks again for watching. Gorelock.